Let's start with you have been introduced, but please, could you say a couple of words about why you all ended up in AI? And please, not kind of the boring stories, the ones that we don't know, so that we can get to know you a little bit more. Ishita, why did you end up within this field?
So as you know, I'm a medical doctor. I worked at a hospital, and I felt that I could do my job better if I had the right tools. So I was looking for pre-lesions of cancer inside people's GI tract with a colonoscopy tool. And I thought, this can be done much better if I just have the right tools, like an AI tool for this. This is in 2016. And when I told my supervisors, they told me I was crazy and this doesn't exist at the moment. And then I went into research to find those solutions. And since then, I've realized that maybe both academia and the clinic is moving a little too slow. So maybe we need to move into another direction where they actually implement those solutions. So that's why I ended up in a consultancy firm.
Oh, excellent. Simen, I guess it was not colonoscopy for you?
No, I was trying to make this interesting, but I was quite interested in politics when I was a student. So I sort of dropped out of physics and did like a math and economics course or a bachelor thesis at UiO. Then sort of one thing led to another, and I guess like I ended up in finance because that's sort of the more mathy part of economics. And I think like I was young and ambitious, like, okay, we're going to fix these risk models in finance. And then actually I think like something happens, like, well, one thing, you have to suit up and you do all of these boring things all day. But also like, I think, and maybe that's good for the debate later, because I just found like the regulations coming into the field of finance, like it was a small field of finance that I was working on, was just wrong. It was like really bad regulations, and it wasn't like too strong regulation or too loose regulation. It was just like the regulators didn't understand the topic. So I got kind of demotivated by that. I looked around, and then I found like where else is there lots of data and interesting problems, and I found okay, well, what's a marketplace? That's like Finn.no. That's a good place to be, and yeah, I guess that's there.
Excellent, Marija.
Like all people that were older than Google, I read Gödel, Escher, Bach when I was in second year of university. What was that? True story.
Yeah.
That was the... Oh, you want more of a story? Okay, sure.
This was just the beginning.
I worked 1 year as the worst software developer at SKF in Göteborg in Sweden, and the only thing that they make in that place is rolling bearings, kullager, right? And so I was trying to decide whether I want to continue studying or work as the worst developer in Sweden. And they still produced at the time, so this would have been 2005. They still had produced at the time this rolling bearing there that is 60 centimeters that at the time, again, I don't know what's happening now, went into the windmills and also gear shifts of tankers. So there's a very large ring. And the way they polish this in the factory that only does that is the best in the world, that invented rolling bearings, is they had a dude with a pail with sandpaper on it that sat there and polished the bearing, because that was the only way to get the precision required. And my colleagues at the R&D team were basically working on a robot arm to replace this human, because the job comes with a health insurance, which says that with a probability higher than 30%, you are going to lose your arm within the next 10 years. And that was written in the contract in the job. You basically trade in your arm for huge insurance payment in the most sophisticated factory that does this extremely well. And what they were trying to do is replace that with a machine, and nobody needs to lose an arm, and that was what clinched it for me, to be honest. I ended up not doing robotics, but...
Excellent. But they succeeded in...
I have no idea. Any secrets. They got rid of me. Did you not follow the part, worst software developer ever?
Sounds like a good application of AI, so let's hope they succeeded. Riley?
Yeah, I guess I wouldn't say I'm in the field of AI. I'm in the field of content creation. I happen to be talking about AI, and I think it's the most interesting thing in the world by far since I've been alive. And I really like technology. And so I'm going to talk about AI because I think it's just kind of taking over everything right now from a consumer perspective. But it's very enlightening listening to other people's perspectives and actually like building some knowledge on actual how AI works, and AI alignment is fascinating to me, and I'm still just now starting to learn about it. So,
Yep. And I mean, part of what you do is also educating people. And you are not kind of the standard students that we typically serve in NORE and the NORE institutions, university students. And of course, AI is maybe changing education a little bit, and maybe a lot, we will see. But what's a typical perfect educational day for you to self-educate? How do you actually do that? How have you done that?
yeah, so, wow. I'm just literally frantically pulling together a bunch of things from everywhere. Like, I take sources from everywhere. So I look up headlines, and then I just go from the surface down as far as I can until I can't understand it anymore. So I'll take a headline and be like, oh, how did they create that? And then I'll go in, okay, that's how they train their models. And then I'll be like, okay, I don't understand that. And then I'll look it up. And with something like ChatGPT, it has kind of sped up the process of being able to go from like a surface level seeing something to actually like investigating it. I think that someone worded that pretty well. They said it blurs the lines between curiosity and investigation, where like you can literally just have a chatbot, you can ask it questions, and it's actually made the learning process much easier. And then now when you start being able to automate it, you can actually create like full-on databases of everything that's going on in the world. And yeah.
Seems to me that this method is very driven by interest. Do you also go through some kind of boring days where you have to kind of learn something that you do not enjoy, or?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, it's being a content creator. Like at the end of the day, like, like if I'm trying to make a living off of creating content, you have to create content that people will watch, and then therefore companies will want to run ads on your videos, or if you can monetize through building a community or things of that nature. So yeah, I mean, I am a slave to like the TikTok algorithm, for example. If the TikTok algorithm doesn't like a form of content, then it's not as useful to create content. And so there's definitely days where like I have to focus on something when I don't actually want to. It's just I know that it'll get views, which is kind of like the problem with like modern media in general. I understand this, but also you got to do what you got to do. You got to play the game sometimes.
I'm sure Simen has some input also, but let's...
It's the other way around as well. Like, we're the slave to the users when we build these kind of algorithms.
You are all slave to the companies that make the apps.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, but
that's an interesting debate, actually.
But I mean, you don't know, like, well, this is a completely different debate, but like, how many times we're being gained by our users to get the algorithm attention, if you want, and like how the mouse and cat game goes on there. That's a completely different story, I think.
it's an interesting story, but I think
I would like to talk about that. Yeah.
Let's stick to the educational perspective a little bit more at least. So, Marija, how kind of what Riley says here? How does that kind of contrast the standard way universities does this, and what's the advantages maybe and disadvantages of the standard way the universities does education?
I have to say that when I was teaching machine learning, I was trying to explain very briefly neural networks to people. It was part of the machine learning course. It was not a whole course on deep learning. And then I realized that one blue, three brown, or three blue, one brown, one of those two combinations, the content creator on YouTube, that there's these animations in which he explains very complex mathematical things in details, has done such an extremely good job with explaining what a neural network is, that I would do better using that in the class and answer questions than trying to replicate the same. So we do not have the type of time that it takes to create a very engaging video that explains a simple concept in a way that is accessible to people. And I think that I and my colleagues, we like to use if we run into things, we like to use it as part of our lectures to just have a visual explanation, because people learn in different ways. We are aware of that. Nobody is interested. I'm only talking about computer science stuff and information science and these kinds of topics that I'm familiar with. I have sit on a lecture of quantum physics of a master's course in which a professor comes in, there are 10 students in the room, he starts writing on the blackboard, and after 10 minutes, the students are writing, he is writing, the students are writing, he is writing, and after 10 minutes, one of the students says, I think you made a mistake over there, and he goes, says, yes, yes, you are right, thank you, and they continue. This class works, right? But for our classes where we have to teach AI to students, for instance, there is a lot more students, there are a lot different backgrounds of people who want to learn AI, so I have to say we are open to using content from what you would call social media that some enthusiast created with a lot of attention and supplement to courses to do that.
What do you think about kind of the future? I just saw, for example, Khan Academy now have these robots that can kind of help you through processes. For example, when you do computations where you do the mistakes and try to personalize the teaching experience. I mean, at universities, you typically is maybe 1 to 100 students, so it's hard to have a very, or more. So it's hard to have a very personalized way of teaching. Do you see the help in
I think
such
that
tools?
the more students they are, the more this type of approaches help with personalized. We point to different sources of the same information, and then the student can choose what works for them. And then we reunite them together in the class. Now, I do not have a lot of faith in artificial intelligence tools because I know exactly what mistakes they make and why. So it will take a while before I'm converted. But I think that there definitely is a time in which we are going to be in a situation. So when I was at university, which would be late 90s, we had classes in which we were not allowed to take calculators. You do by hand the calculation because we want to see the process, right? We're talking Fourier transforms by hand. Whoever knows. So, and then slowly I saw that everybody in university stepped away for that because there is no point. You can use computers, they're available, you can do this by computers. The important thing is that you understand how it works so you can fix the mistakes. And I think we are moving into a future in which we will do the same. The important thing is for students to be able to check their own work, and then they can use AI to do the work. As long as they're actually capable to check their own work, everybody wins.
Simen, how do you do it in Schibsted? You're responsible, as I understand, for educating or lifelong learning maybe within Schibsted, I don't know.
Yeah, we're trying to mimic the universities in education, sure. No, I think there's two different things we're really talking about there. So one thing is actually learning AI, and the other thing is to learn the tools of AI.
Yeah.
I mean, learning the tools of AI, I'm not the expert. You're the expert, really, right? You're the user of these algorithms. I might be able to design them. I might understand how they're made. I might I can say things like the GPT model is just an autoregressive next word prediction probability thing. But I don't know the practical consequences of this. I can't see that. So I think I'm as dark as anyone. Maybe I have some insights in what kind of mistakes them do because I sort of understand how they're trained. But that's very basic or very those kind of heuristics. I think is you can get from interacting with these things. So on that field, I'm not really the expert, and I'm struggling as well, right? I'm trying out these AI tools, I'm trying out Copilot, I'm trying out GPT-4 to do coding, and I see, oh, it worked for this, it didn't work for this. Oh, this was really stupid. Maybe it created some code, and I tried it out and it looked perfect, and then only a week after, I found this really weird bug that sort of made everything upside down and didn't work at all, right? But it was impossible to see, and I had to sort of figure this out. And so does education, right? I'm in sort of coding AI industry, but education is just like another industry. They have to figure out how to use AI as a tool. And then it's should you use it for exams? Should you not use it for exams? I think the calculator analogy is perfect. This is like a word calculator. And sometimes you want to have a calculator when you're sitting your exam. Sometimes you don't want because there's some skills you need. And in writing, it is writing and understanding how you communicate, or sort of, this is ironic because I can say it, but sort of planning your response and sort of giving out a good reasoning sequence. Like that's a part of something you should do in education. And that's something GPT can do for you. So maybe you shouldn't give the students GPT when they learn this skill. Then I spoke to a teacher who had a very good insight and was like, we have to start using this tool straight away. We have to, like, because there's this debate in education, like, should we take them in now or should we wait? And she was clear, like, we have to start using it now, because now they're making sufficient amount of mistakes so we can spot them. If we start using this in 10 years, like if we block them for 10 years and then we start using it for 10 years, well, maybe we won't spot these mistakes, and the students will not and never understand that they are making mistakes. So, like, we have to take them as they are, and we have to understand them. And maybe that's easier now than later.
Yep. Ishita, with your background from the medical sciences, how will this change the medical education?
It's already changing the medical education because, first of all, I regard as kind of domain experts in medicine and healthcare. So the fact that if we don't understand how we're deploying these AI tools and how the outcomes are going to affect our patients, is very bad. We need to both be there on the end when they're being programmed, like, for instance, for labeling, annotation. So the data, we need to be able to understand the foundation for the data, which patients are not represented in the data. Are there any algorithmically underserved people in these data? So I think a lot of people ask me, like, okay, this is being introduced as a part of the medical education now in several countries. In Norway, we have at least 2 universities where you have subjects in the medical studies or the profession where you actually can choose, or it's obligatory to have these kind of education. And it's on a very basic level. It's fine, but it needs to be more advanced in the coming years. And also the fact that we're still getting questions about, well, what if AI is actually making doctors obsolete? Like, will they take over their jobs? I don't think so. Well, at least not in the near future. I think that we need to learn how they can support us, like clinical decision tools. How can we become better at our jobs and also spend more time, like I initially said, on our patients, hands-on treatment. And even if we get robotics and maybe AI tools that can even take our place in that scene, I still think that we need to be able to explain to our patients. Maybe sometimes the decision is a black box, like we don't understand the outcome, but we need to be able to explain to our patients, this is what the model says. We don't really know or understand how it came to this conclusion, but it leads to this and this outcome. And now you can decide, get together with us as doctors, how we will proceed. So I think in the future, there will be a lot more, collaboration between AI tools and doctors. And this is not something you can choose. This is not optional. This is coming. So it's not only for teachers and those in the in that area. I think it's for all of us. We need to implement it in the education system.
Yep. This is happening anyhow, so we have to kind of start using the tools in a good way. I will take one question from the audience. I see several Slido questions coming up now. AI are usually trained using historic data created by humans or human behavior. How can we prevent bias and discrimination from the past being sustained by AI? Anyone? Marija, this is your topic, I guess.
Don't be stupid. So basically, just being aware that this is historical data and that it's like looking at stars, right? When you look forever until all people learned that when you're looking at a star, you're not looking at the star, you're looking at the star as it were hundreds of millions of years ago. So we need to actually get the same level of public understanding for data. You're not looking at human behavior described, you're looking at human behavior described as it was 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago. And I think that is the first step, to have a general enough understanding that this is the state. So then you start asking questions. What is the difference? Is it what changed? How is this reflected in the data? And so on.
Ishita, I guess from medicine you have the same problem of bias in a lot of algorithms. How do you deal with it?
I think, first of all, we need to understand that we are so biased ourselves that we need to address that first. And along the way, if we implement these AI tools, they're also going to be full of bias. So I think it starts with the realization that we need to address it in general, not just because we're using AI. Otherwise we're just going to perpetuate this. So I think it's more of a general problem. And also, if you are a domain expert, then it's your job to actually identify where are the biases, whose data is not included in here. So we all need to become at least a little tech savvy and be able to understand the basic knowledge of AI and how it's funded.
Read the negative data space, basically.
Exactly.
It's a survivor bias. You focus on analyzing what's wrong with the data that you have, what is needed to stop and think, what is the data that I don't have?
Yeah. And could you turn this around? I mean, very often the biases are a reflection. I mean, this discrimination is a reflection that we have historically been discriminating. So could we twist this around? Is it easier to change this within an algorithm than going out changing the prejudice in all individuals?
Exactly, I think it is. That's why I'm so optimistic, because I think changing human behavior, that's hard. Changing just an algorithm on and off, I mean, it's much easier, I think. So it will take a lifetime, and not even that is enough time to change human behavior.
I think that's like, it's also like, you can fix it in the algorithm, or you can fix it in the data, and that's like up to the sort of technicians of the algorithm to fix or to look at. Well, of course, like the product.
You people need to spend more time talking to humanists and social scientists. That's all I'm going to say. If society is all of a sudden going to agree how to intervene on algorithms, it's like, okay.
I'll buy popcorn. If you're building an algorithm, like you have to fix the bias problem. There's no one outside that will fix the bias problem in your algorithm. That's the only thing I meant.
Well, this is a very computer guy kind
of
of
someone has to, no, I'm not saying anything that someone has to write the code.
You decide for the entire society what is right and wrong?
No, not at all.
I'm playing devil's advocate here.
But it gives us more transparency, don't you think? It gives us more transparency into our own
That's
minds.
just true. It does show a mirror up to our faces.
Exactly.
This is what you people actually are like. It's like, oh, we don't like it.
If you know that you're behaving in a certain way, you might be able to actually change it. If you're not aware,
That's true.
then it's different.
I'll give you that.
I'm not sure whether this is when I should moderate or when I should just leave and let you...
So I didn't mean that, but like if I build the algorithm, I will have to make the modeling decisions. And I can be a company, I can be a society, I can be whatever. But like someone has to write it, and we have to figure it out. And I think like what we have to be is we have to be transparent. Like what data is it trained on? And we, like as the builders, this could be a society, it could be regulators building algorithms together with companies.
They just say what you do.
But we have to be transparent. And like we have to say like, okay, this is the data it's trained on. This is the kind of biases we might have. We think there's a bias like this, so we will modify it in this way. Like we will like, if there's a gender imbalance, like yes, we actually took like an active choice and sort of boosted women in this algorithm up from 30 to 50% because we think it's right. And we have to be transparent about that. We have to be transparent about how we train them. I think that's sort of the important part, because then we as users, like jumping over here, we can say, okay, this is what the algorithm is doing. Yep. Like on Finn, we're saying we are optimizing for clicks and engagement on these things. Like we want to try to find what you're interested in. And then they don't really need to know if they're recurrent neural network, if it's a transformer or whatever, like kind of weird architectures in there. But if we tell them like, this is what we're aiming for, this is what we're using, then I think we come a very far way of trust in these kind of algorithms.
And when you say we, obviously Schibsted is gigantic, but also to a certain degree we are now Microsoft and Google pretty much. As Microsoft said when they kind of released the news about taking in ChatGPT into their Windows 365 package, and so we are inviting Google to dance. And yesterday they answered this dance, so we'll see pretty much these tools transforming through these two giants. And now, as Riley also showed, a lot of smaller companies will come up. But how could we, the question, how could we kind of try to make this, as you say, we need to make it more transparent. And the largest companies, they are not very transparent. It's hard to understand. I mean, the ChatGPT is closed. You cannot understand it. You cannot do that much research on it, really understanding it. How could we try to engage and get economy and a system or regulation up and going that will ensure more transparency, more openness, maybe more actors controlling this than only the two biggest ones?
I'm not too worried about it. We talk a lot about this internally in Schibsted because, I mean, okay, so Schibsted, okay, I'm not speaking on behalf of Schibsted today, but...
He's going to keep his job.
No, but I mean, Schibsted is like in this weird position. Like sometimes we are the small incumbents towards the tech giants, and sometimes we're seen as a tech giant in Norway. Like so we have these two roles. And Schibsted is like worried, like, will all the data science in Schibsted be obsolete? Like, will we just do OpenAI calls and that's like the AI we will doing? I don't think so. Like, that's not the future. And you can sort of see it. You can see it in image recognition, like from 2012 and onwards. That's open source. Like, the best models out there are open source. The same thing is happening now in language. And you have OpenAI now. Yes, they put a lot of money into building the GPT models. And now they're trying to squeeze out some money out of it by being closed. I think that's bad, because it's really annoying, and also for me. I want open models. But you can see, like, the open source community now is catching up. Like, you get open source language models, and they're getting super cheap. They're getting, like, really fast behind. And you had a memo from, like, leaked memo from Google, like, last week or this week, just saying, like, we cannot keep up with open source, like, with the researchers, with this. I mean, me as a researcher, I want my algorithms to be known. Like, that's sort of in it for me. I want the fame and glory of my paper.
It always confuses how people...
I think, like, the tech giants will lose here.
Yep. So Twitter opened their recommender algorithms. Will you do the same, or?
I'm here talking. We want to be as public as possible, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, but also the algorithms behind the recommendations.
Yeah. I publish and I talk about algorithms as much as possible. So,
yep.
Like, if you want a session on that, we might do it at a different stage than here. But yeah, I'm happy to talk.
That's excellent. And of course, economy is behind this. And as I mentioned, how to kind of create economy and regulation. Do anyone of you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, we just do it.
Just do it.
So basically, the situation, people forget that we have regulated every single great discovery that humans came up with, including sliced bread, especially sliced bread. So when food became an industry, when people started buying food instead of making it at home, at some point there was a state of affairs turn of the last century in which everybody can put whatever they want in their bread that they sell to the people. There was no requirement to put content label to have consistency that you sell the same bread. We regulated that. And at the time when that was the regulation came in place, bakers were complaining that we are going to end their business because, you know, they cannot guarantee they're going to get the same wheat, and people like the wood chippings in their bread. It makes for a better digestion or whatever, right? So we've been through this as society very many times. So the first thing that you require is the determination that we are going to be regulating this. What are we regulating? Okay. And then we start and go ahead and do it. I mean, it takes 20 years. You don't want it to go any faster than 20 years, but it is very, very clear at this point that we need to have some regulation or to require the AI to look away at certain point, to not collect particular data. Because as engineers, what we are worried about is, well, let's optimize, let's get the best possible precision, let's get the best possible accuracy, let's get the most clicks, the whatever number that you want to optimize. And then there is the law there that says, okay, you can go so far, because going past this, you're just going to ruin it for everybody. And people argue with me on Twitter all the time. It's like regulation is going to kill innovation. No.
But it takes time, and the technology is just speeding up. How do we catch up with the regulations, or should we catch up? How do we do it practically?
Well, you do not just solve you do not, you're asking me, how do we stand in the middle of the river and stop the river, right? You're not going to do that. You're going to dig channels around the river. You're going to try to intervene at the source. You're going to advise people to not build stuff in the middle of the river. That is the analogy. So if I need to lock this in, we need to educate people that, first of all, how much data collection is happening. Public awareness on what is data collection, where does it go, and what can clever behavior scientists do with it is very low at the moment, and that needs to be increased. You need to be able to have regulators that understand what the challenges are, and then they will figure out what are the best norms and laws and things that have to come into place. You need politicians to understand that this is something that is not going to change. It's not, because right now the conversation is AI will end the world. 50% of the AI researchers believe there is a 10% chance of AI killing us all.
They cannot be very good in statistics, I think.
Let's not start discussing that statistics. I mean, it's like, but there needs to be an understanding that this is a societal problem. It's not a couple of apps that we are playing around with making videos. So it goes beyond that. When you take the same technology and fire a bunch of people from your customer service department because it does good enough job, you'd have done something evil. So it takes creating of new societal infrastructure to handle this.
Mm. And this was one question from the audience here related to that. I mean, things will change. And why are we not talking about the coping up with change coming for society? Who is responsible for it? I think the reflection is society will change. People will lose their jobs. Some.
Yes.
How do we kind of democratize maybe, make a system that kind of ensures that this is for the good of people?
Which country are we talking about?
Let's talk about Norway first.
Because America I'm not touching, sorry. It's your own.
Yeah, what you just said, being an American, I'm like, she's like, okay, we need politicians who understand these things. I'm like, okay, yeah, we're out. Like, it seems like a lost cause over there, but
yeah. You have several echelons of politicians. Some of them understand exactly well. Plus, John Oliver explained it. Come on.
I would say it's not such a big difference from any other new technology coming in. I mean, yes, there's a lot of, I think maybe that's sort of the sad part about the discussion. A lot of people are talking about this doomsday Terminator things coming and taking over the world. That's not the risk here. It is data leakage. It is that we are collecting lots of data on users. They don't really know what they're doing. But like the real problem actually there, I think, like we as society, we don't really care. I think that's the problem. Like no one, I mean, even I used to work, like I used to be a politician for like a privacy-friendly company. Well, now I work in Schibsted, so let's discuss that later. But I mean, I don't care. Like I get this new app. Like you presented this Rewind app on the stage. I downloaded it already. It looked great. It's like, oh shit! Like all those data that will be collected. I think they were doing some privacy stuff, but I didn't read it well enough. And I think that is the problem. Well, like, we as a society don't care, and then why should the politicians care? I mean, they're a reflection of us. And if the public debate is Terminators, like then we're having the wrong discussion. Discussion.
So the people that I primarily work with, I work with a lot of like content creators and business owners, like through and through. Like I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and you're faced with that decision, like with people who are running. Like I know a lot of people who have 3-4 people, or even if it's just them, and they're bringing in a ton of money per month, and they're like, okay, like we can learn and think about the ethics of using this tool and think about the data, or if we take that time to actually learn those things, we're going to lose to our competition. So it's like it's an unhealthy competition, because with tech you can just take over so much part of the market, or in media, or especially on like social media, you can take over certain parts of the market with these AI tools, with like these automation, like creating content through automation. And so that, I think it's like that in all in
and the consumers don't care.
Right, because they'd rather compete and make more money than care about.
They don't care until they do, okay? I mean, the thing is that they don't care until they do. And when they do, then their business falls apart. And maybe a couple of people have made a lot of money, and they're not going to be stupid enough to lose them in the next couple of years. But you see this process. It's like, it's not guaranteed. People can walk away. People can choose not to, regardless of what the statisticians tell you.
But again, we have this competition, and especially now, maybe between Microsoft and Google. And we had this public letter asking for a pause of 6 months and so on, because they think everything is going too fast. And how should we deal with it? How should we catch up? I saw SV now raised a similar question at the parliament here. So is this the solution, to just close it down? It doesn't seem like the right solution to me. No. Or if not, I mean, everyone is now worried that the development is going too fast. We are running away. This is not kind of secure. We don't know the impact on society, on people, and so on. So how should the regulation catch up? Who
Well,
is
first of
responsible?
all, we are not regulating AI here. We are regulating the business model of free apps, or what Cory Doctorow called the business apps that rely on enshittification of free apps, right? The problem here is that you have a business model in which you can freely go out and say, I'm just going to test this on all of you people, or the way we call it, free access, so you can play around with it and we gather information to improve the experience. Note how they don't say your experience, right? So, and then you have a bunch of people who are all on the same, using the same software. They have learned, they have invested hours how to learn how to use that. Now you can make a TikTok video that is 1 minute long, but you have spent 5 hours making the video and figuring stuff out, and I'm being conservative, right? So you've spent time learning how to use these apps. And you like to do that, and you do it regularly, so it's easy for you to learn. The rest of us are just not that easy, so I use the app which I have learned how to use. I have invested myself in it, so I'm going to be that much harder to convert to use to a different app. Mm-hmm. So the first step is get people to like and use your app and get in a herd, right? Once you have the herd is not going to leave. You're going to sell a bunch of things to a different part of that business bargain. Once they're hooked in and they can't leave because they also have been invested, then you can kind of increase market value for shareholder value for your owners of your company and so on. This is the business model. You have startups that go out in the world and say, I'm just going to try this out. I just saw on the internet, there was this guy saying, I have a startup. I gave access to this AI to all of my banking and investment data, and within 2 hours, it saved me $200 on this and this and that. And I was like, hang on. You gave access to all of your financial data to this AI? And then people in the comments were like, hang on. Would you feel so confident about this if you did not actually own the code that runs all of this stuff? So the danger here is that this is the danger. We are allowing this type of businesses to be created and to go ahead. And whether they are using AI or they are using something completely different, it doesn't matter. The problem is the business model in which you are allowed to sell or give an untested, unverified, flawed product to the general public to play around with, use them for testing purposes, basically, and then take that knowledge and information and create a business product that you're going to sell to people afterwards. That is the problem here, because you're live testing on the open public. She cannot run tests in medicine without an approval of an ethics board. I'm sure she can come up with tons of tests that she would like to run. She's not allowed to. I was
actually going to address that, because we're talking about technology moving too fast, but there is one field especially where this is not happening at the moment, and that is in medicine and healthcare. So we are not facing this problem. We're actually having the opposite problem. It's not coming in fast enough. We already see that there's a huge
Because you
gap.
have ethics boards. Mistake.
Exactly. So we are heavily regulated. We're heavily regulated, so much that it's almost like it's strangling maybe the innovation. So maybe we can look into how healthcare is doing it, because it's so heavily regulated. I'm not saying that that should be the ideal, but I'm saying that there is a principle in medicine that we all follow, and that is the Hippocratic Oath, which is do no harm. So you don't implement anything that you do not know to the full extent what is the implication of this. If you know that it's going to cause harm, then you stop. You do not perform that act. And I think that what we're seeing, the shortage of AI applications in healthcare, is basically from the regulations. So we have ethics boards. We also have evidence-based medicine. You do not perform anything without having...
Crazy stuff.
Maybe it's taking too much time. I think it's taking a little too much time with the adoption, but it's the safe way, because with healthcare, it's the high-risk solutions. I mean, these are not money you're losing. These are actually people's lives that you're affecting. So I think maybe one should take a page of lessons from medicine and try to maybe regulate it at least a little bit more and perform like the act of do no harm and implement that into the minds of the business owners and those who are creating these apps.
Simen?
Yeah, so I think like healthcare is one of the earlier sources of where we did statistics as well. So I think it's an interesting case, and I think also shows the danger because it can be overregulated. And I think and you shouldn't just look away from this iterative learning in production kind of style of learning how your product is, because that's really important. I mean, if we had in 2009 when Finn started recommender systems, I'm 100% sure they were more biased, they were worse, they were more promoting stereotypes than what we have today. And the only way we managed to get there is that we made like small iterative steps. We did just like, oh, how did this work? We used small groups. And you can say like we're not fighting cancer and medicine and doing test groups like that. So like then we couldn't have worked that sort of easy to test out new ideas. But that's sort of the risk. But we do have a fairly low risk of doing wrong. I mean, you show your wrong ad, it's not the end of the world. Like you just feel it's a bad app. Mm-hmm. But by doing this iterative thing, we can really improve really fast. And then we can measure these metrics like biases, like engagement, like all the things we care about, and improve the product. I think like that's the fastest way to improve the product. Then there are reasons we shouldn't do it that fast. And I think health is a very good example that you have to make some checks before you just push things out. But I have a very good example. Like, it's horrible. Like my partner, she has diabetes 1. And she has this app that will tell her when it's low and high and everything. And if it goes really fast low, she can pass out and eventually die, right? So they have this possibility of like an app that can send data to an app on my phone, and I can sort of be warned whenever this could happen. So as an extra safety. The problem with this app, it's horrible. Like, it doesn't work at all. They have like 5 compatible Android devices that are 10 years old. Like, that's what they support. And like, I don't really know the story behind this, but I'm sure it's like because the app has to be perfect before you can launch it, right? So any new version has to go through all these regulatory steps to be launched.
Also, the number of people with diabetes in Norway is not bigger than the number of people who like to play with Midjourney.
Sure. But diabetes is like one of the biggest spending of healthcare. So I'm sure, like they have the big pharma companies have their incentives to build this app better, but they're just not able to. And like I would much rather have this app on my phone, and maybe it fails sometimes, and I'm being informed of this because this is a low risk healthcare thing, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Than that no one can use it at all.
Do no harm. Unfortunately, the time is up, and we have so many questions from the audience here. I don't know, we have a break coming up. Please maybe spend the break and ask the questions in person. Some of us will go out.
Read the questions so we know what the questions were, and we are not Shanghai in the break, huh?
Sorry?
Can you just read the questions?
It's so many, so let's rather do it in the break. You can use your phone on the Slido there and look at it, and people can discuss. And Marija, are you here for a coffee after the whole thing? Or maybe some of us will go for a coffee and we can discuss also after the whole seminar. But it's just a break. After the break, we will be back exactly 12 o'clock. And then we will hear more about the Norwegian AI infrastructure from Sabri. And the last talk will be turning ideas into value-generating application using ML ops by Javad. So please be back at 12 o'clock.